Welcome back to Elite Jamaica. And for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Alex. And today's video is a story that involves beauty, greed, betrayal, and a cold-blooded murder that sent shockwaves all over the world. Now, we have seen our share of true crime stories on the TV and on social media. But this is a case not a lot of people knew about. It is filled with twists and turns that will keep you on the edge of your seats. So if you want to see more videos like these, please hit the like button and let's explore the case of a Jamaican beauty queen turned murderer. In the early 1980s, Denise Davidson, a dazzling Miss Jamaica finalist and renowned swimsuit and calendar model, was living a seemingly idyllic life, bound by matrimony to Dr. Louis Davidson, a fellow Jamaican. However, it was the discovery of a shocking secret, the existence of another man's child within her, that birthed the sinister seeds of a murder conspiracy. Born in 1960 in Kingston, Jamaica, Denise Davidson was the third of 7 children. Her innate beauty was her passport to a world of opportunity. The early 1980s marked the beginning of a new chapter in Denise's life. She crossed paths with an ambitious young medical student named Louis Davidson. At 22, Denise fell in love with Louis, who was 27 at the time, and both shared their roots in Kingston, Jamaica. In 1982, the couple tied the knot and embarked on a journey to the United States, settling in Tampa, Florida. They soon welcomed a daughter, Natalie, into their lives. While Denise took on the role of a homemaker, Louis ascended the professional ladder, becoming the head of emergency room pediatrics at Bayfront Medical Center in nearby St. Petersburg. However, as time passed, the foundation of their marriage began to crumble, leading to the initiation of divorce proceedings in October 1993. Interestingly, in the midst of the couple's separation, love found its way back into their lives. Louis had found solace in the arms of his emergency room co-worker, Patricia Denino, while Denise had embarked on romance with Jamaican club owner Leonardo Leo Cisneros. It seemed that both had moved on from their past. But this semblance of peace shattered on the fateful afternoon of January 25, 1994. Police officer Eli J. Artzig was on patrol when he received a distressing call concerning a dead body at the Thunder Bay Apartments in northern St. Petersburg. It was Patricia Denino who informed Artzig that the victim was her fiancé, Dr. Louis Davidson, who was only 39 years old at the time. What Artzig discovered inside the apartment was the stuff of nightmares. Louis lay lifeless in a bathtub filled with warm, bloody water. He was found blindfolded, gagged, and hogtied, his hands and feet bound behind him with an electrical cord stripped from a vacuum cleaner. An autopsy later revealed a gruesome account of Louis's final moments: 3 broken ribs, facial bruising, and numerous lacerations on the back of his head, likely caused by a blunt object. However, his cause of death was drowning, as indicated in court documents. Intriguingly, investigators came across a size 9 void shoe print in the apartment, suggesting an unexpected and violent intruder. Despite the chaos left behind, a bag containing $19,300 in cash was oddly left untouched, diminishing the possibility of a mere robbery. Patricia Denino revealed that she had spoken to Louis that morning, and when she couldn't reach him in the afternoon, she went to his apartment only to discover the gruesome scene. Adding to the puzzle, Louis had been receiving a suspicious number of hang-up calls recently, leading detectives to suspect that someone was closely monitoring his movements. The intrigue deepened when detectives learned about the bitter divorce between Louis and Denise. The custody battle for their daughter had intensified, with Denise even threatening to return to Jamaica with the child. Denise's denial of any involvement in her husband's death seemed unwavering first when interviewed by detectives at her Tampa home. She insisted that despite their impending divorce, Louis was the father of her daughter and that she had no motive to wish him harm. Denise narrated how she had met her current boyfriend, Leo Cisneros, during a trip back to Jamaica. She claimed that he was in Jamaica at the time of her husband's murder. As detectives delved deeper into the shady world of Leo Cisneros, they uncovered his connections with Jamaica's notorious shower posse. He had been previously arrested during a traffic stop in Georgia, and a warrant for trafficking narcotics was now hanging over him. The web of intrigue continued to unravel when investigators placed Denise under surveillance and subpoenaed her financial records. Bank records unveiled a startling revelation that over 6 months she had made 21 payments, totaling over $15,000 through Western Union to a man named Robert Roy Gordon and a woman named Carol Kayson. Robert Gordon's criminal history was exposed, and he was known to be an associate of Leo Cisneros. It became clear that a network of connections was starting to emerge. To dig deeper into the mystery, detectives initiated a wiretap on Denise's phone. Records unveiled an astonishing 52 calls to a pager on the morning of the murder. More intriguingly, the mobile phone that returned these calls was one she had purchased herself. Police managed to trace this mobile phone from outside Louis Davidson's apartment to a Days Inn on the other side of Tampa Bay. Witnesses at the Days Inn pointed the finger at Robert Gordon, who had shared a room with a white woman sporting blonde hair. As the investigation continued, an unexpected twist came to light. Among the items left behind by the hasty guests at the Days Inn was a pair of blood-splattered size 9 white sneakers and a grey sweatshirt. Remarkably, the blood and other fibers found on the sweatshirt were matched to Louis Davidson. It was further established that just a day before the murder, Denise Davidson had used her credit card to purchase a pair of size 9 white sneakers and a grey sweatshirt from a Walmart near her Tampa home. On February 28, detectives traveled to Miami and arrested Robert Gordon, charging him with first-degree murder in the death of Louis Davidson. The pursuit of justice was relentless. The narrative took another dramatic turn when detectives arrived at the home of Carol Kayson, finding her in the company of a man who initially went by the name Tony Bowens. However, a fingerprint check would unveil Bowens' true identity as Merrill McDonald, a 47-year-old man with an outstanding warrant for drug-related charges. While Kayson admitted to receiving money on behalf of McDonald, it was eventually determined that she had no direct involvement in the murder. Tragically, due to a paperwork mix-up, McDonald was released before he could be charged with murder. He fled to New York, where he was apprehended 7 months later, as reported by the Tampa Bay Times. The investigation continued with a close eye on Denise Davidson, who was contemplating fleeing the country, as revealed through wiretaps. On a fateful morning on March 4, 1994, her surveillance team observed her making her way to the Tampa International Airport. It was a pivotal moment when, as Mike Salona recounted, authorities arrested her on the spot and charged her with first-degree murder in her husband's death. Simultaneously, Mark DeSaro journeyed to Jamaica to interview Leo Cisneros. Despite a desire to apprehend Cisneros on the spot, an arrest warrant remained elusive. However, DeSaro's conversation with Cisneros revealed a startling admission. He posed a question. Quote, "What would happen if I told you I sent somebody there to beat him up and they just got carried away?" End quote. In a dramatic turn of events, another character in this intricate drama was apprehended in Jamaica and charged with first-degree murder. She soon made a decision that would have a significant implication for the case. She agreed to testify against her co-defendants. Shore's testimony would unveil a story that, while not exonerating her, offered a different perspective. She revealed that she had met Robert Gordon and Merrill McDonald after encountering them at Ilaya Park Racing and Casino outside Miami. Importantly, she claimed to be unaware of any murder plot. In a shocking twist, Shore disclosed that she had agreed to drive Gordon and McDonald to Louis Davidson's home for the sum of $100. After the murder, she transported them back to the Days Inn. Additionally, details emerged suggesting that Cisneros and Davidson had rendezvous with them at the hotel. Despite her involvement, Shore's charges were reduced to accessory after the fact, leading to her receiving probation. Her decision to testify offered authorities a vital piece of the puzzle that was slowly coming together. Thanks to sure statements and newfound leads, law enforcement officials were finally able to secure an arrest warrant for Leo Cisneros. The noose was tightening around the perpetrators, but a significant obstacle remained. Cisneros had vanished, his whereabouts an enigma that perplexed investigators and fueled public intrigue. As detectives dug deeper into the labyrinthine motivations behind the murder of Dr. Louis Davidson, they stumbled upon a motive that added a layer of complexity to the case. Denise Davidson, it was revealed, was carrying Leo Cisneros' child, and a substantial life insurance policy worth $400,000 loomed in the background. This shocking revelation raised the questions about the true depths of the conspiracy. With every layer they uncovered, the investigators uncovered a story of deceit, greed, and murder that sent shivers down the spine of the public. On September 16, 1994, Denise Davidson faced the consequences of her actions. She was found guilty of first-degree murder and subsequently sentenced to life in prison, marking the end of her glamorous life's chapter. Merrill MacDonald and Robert Gordon, both found guilty of first-degree murder, were sentenced to death and are currently on Florida's death row. Their fate hung in the balance as their legal battles continued. Meanwhile, the elusive figure at the center of this complex tale, Leo Cisneros, remained a fugitive, and his first-degree murder charge loomed over him. His whereabouts continued to confound investigators, adding an element of suspense to the narrative, which was far from being resolved. The story of Denise Davidson, the Jamaican beauty queen turned murderer, continues to captivate those who delve into the darker corners of human nature. It stands as a reminder that behind the facades of beauty and charm, there may hide the most sinister secrets, as well as a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice by those who refuse to let heinous crimes go unsolved.
Tiffany Gayle's story is one of unimaginable sorrow. A young girl with dreams of a better life in Canada. Instead, she was subjected to a life of pain and relentless torment. In an undated note found by the Peel police in the Gayle's home, Tiffany expressed her deep sense of guilt, writing, and I quote, "I make them happy a day or two. Then it's the same thing over and over and over again. I hate to see my parents angry, but I guess there is nothing I can do, because all I have ever done is cause pain in the family." End quote. Tiffany obviously held herself responsible for the mistreatment inflicted upon her by her parents. Welcome to another chilling episode of our true crime series. Today, we delve into the tragic and heart-wrenching tale of Tiffany Gayle, a 15-year-old girl from Jamaica who went to Canada with dreams of a better life. Little did she know, her life would be cut short in a horrifying way, and her parents would be on trial for her murder. This is the tragic story of Tiffany Gayle. Our story begins in 2009 when Tiffany Gayle embarked on a journey from her home in Clarendon, Jamaica, to Canada, where she would be reunited with her father, Frederick Gayle, and her stepmother, Elizabeth Gayle. Tiffany, a bright and hopeful girl with dreams of becoming a nurse, had left her homeland behind in search of the better life that was promised to her in the Great White North. However, Tiffany's hopeful beginning soon took on a nightmarish turn as she watched her dreams shatter before even getting a chance to materialize. The exact reasons behind the abuse that followed remained a mystery, but it was during her short time in Canada that her nightmare began, leading to her premature death in June of 2010. If you find these videos interesting or informative, please support the channel by clicking the like button. A lot of cases like these are not given the exposure or attention they deserve, so based on this, I decided to shed some light on a few of these cases. However, because of the nature of most of these videos, they have limited or no ads. So if you are so inclined and want to chip in and help support my research, you can use the PayPal link below to donate to the channel. Your support is much appreciated. The beginning of the nightmare. It was during that dark period of her life in 2010 that Tiffany's life took a tragic turn. The innocent young girl became a victim of relentless emotional and physical abuse, the brutality of which is difficult to fathom. The methods of torment used against her were varied and cruel. They even included threats to send her back to Jamaica, which left the young girl confused and emotionally scarred. June 12, 2010, the abuse escalated to a fatal level that resulted in Tiffany's lifeless body being found in a bloodied bathtub in the basement of her family home. She had been brutally beaten to death with a baseball bat and a barbecue tool. Tiffany suffered multiple fractures, lacerations, and internal bleeding. Her parents, that were supposed to be safeguarding her, became the prime suspects in her murder.
Guilty as charged. That's the verdict reached today in the beating death of 15-year-old Tiffany Gayle. As Michelle Chung tells us, a Brampton jury took only a few hours to find her parents guilty of first-degree murder.
Her father, Frederick Gayle, and stepmother, Elizabeth, stood accused of her murder. The prosecution's case relied heavily on forensic evidence, aiming to prove that Tiffany was brutally killed by both of the parents, utilizing two different weapons, a baseball bat and a barbecue tool, in a vicious beating of the young girl. Tiffany's lifeless body was found naked from the waist up and already in rigor mortis in the blood-smeared basement bathtub of her Brampton home on June 12, 2010. The horrifying details revealed multiple blunt force trauma wounds to her legs, back, and arms, with her shoulder and fifth rib broken in several places. Pools of her blood were spattered throughout the house, a stark reminder of the brutality she endured. Efforts to clean the crime scene were evident, but a chemical process unveiled the bloody footprints belonging to both Frederick and Elizabeth. DNA analysis also confirmed the presence of Tiffany's blood and several items of clothing belonging to the couple that were seized. The Gayles attempted to shift blame onto each other. Elizabeth claimed her husband struck Tiffany with a baseball bat while she tried to stop him, implying that she was a battered wife. Meanwhile, Frederick's lawyer suggested that Elizabeth was the aggressor, even stating that she had an appointment at a fertility clinic in order to have a child with her husband. However, the picture painted by the prosecutors was one of oppressive parenting. Tiffany and her siblings lived under strict rules and discipline, restricted from using the phone or socializing with friends outside of school. Tiffany's life was filled with threats of being sent back to Jamaica, corporal punishment, and other forms of harsh discipline. Before her tragic demise, Tiffany had been kicked out of her room, left to sleep in the garage. Her connection to her family was tense. They took away her belongings and subjected her to harsh punishments. On the day before her death, Tiffany's friend noticed injuries on her body, inflicted during a fight with her stepmother, Elizabeth. Tiffany's parents had forbidden her from coming home that night. Despite her friend's concern and advice to call if she needed help, Tiffany never had a chance to make that or any call. When investigators searched the Gayles' home, they uncovered more than just the gruesome crime scenes. Heartbreaking notes written by Tiffany herself were discovered in her parents' bedroom dresser, each one expressing her love for her family and her pain at causing them suffering. The police arrested Frederick and Elizabeth Gayle 3 days after Tiffany's death and charged them with first-degree murder. They pleaded not guilty and claimed they had nothing to do with the killing. They said that they had left Tiffany at home while they went to a church service and returned to find her dead in the bathtub. But the evidence against them was overwhelming. The police found blood on their clothing, a shower curtain in the sink, and traces of blood all over the floor, indicating that they had tried to clean up the crime scene. The autopsy revealed that Tiffany had died from blunt force trauma and shock, and that she had been dead for several hours before her parents called 911. The motive for the murder was unclear, but the court heard that there was a history of tension and abuse in the family. Tiffany had confided in her friends and teachers that she was unhappy at home, and that her parents were strict and controlling. She had also told them that she was afraid of her father, who had once beaten her with a belt when she was younger. Tiffany's older half-sister, Samantha, who had moved to Canada with her in 2009, testified that her father had asked her to change her statement to the police after the murder, He wanted her to retract the word disrespectful, which she had used to describe why she was sent back to Jamaica just 5 weeks after arriving in Brampton. She said her father wanted her to cover for him, but she refused. The jury of 6 men and 6 women deliberated for about 5.5 hours before finding Frederick and Elizabeth Gayle guilty of first-degree murder on June 26, 2013. They were sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of parole for 25 years. Tiffany Gayle's murder shocked and saddened the community, especially her friends and classmates, who remembered her as a kind and friendly girl who had a bright future ahead of her. They held vigils and fundraisers in her memory and hoped that justice would be served for her. Tiffany Gayle's story is a tragic example of how domestic violence can escalate into horrific crime, and how a young child's dream can be mercilessly cut short by the very people who are supposed to love and protect her. Her case also raised awareness around the issues of child mistreatment and the need for more support and intervention for victims. Several organizations and initiatives were launched in Tiffany's honor, such as the Tiffany Gayle Foundation, which provides scholarships and mentorship for young girls, and the Tiffany Gayle Project, which offers counseling and resources for survivors of abuse. Tiffany Gayle's legacy lives on in the hearts and minds of those who knew her, and those who were inspired by her courage and resilience. She will be remembered as a beautiful soul who deserved a better life and the chance to have realized her dreams. This tragic story starts in the Caribbean island of Jamaica and ends in Toronto, Canada. For the past couple of decades, Canada has been a popular destination for Jamaicans who decided to migrate, and Toronto has been the #1 city where immigrants from Jamaica settled. Dwayne Biddersingh was a 13-year-old boy from Jamaica who traveled to Canada in 1991 with his siblings to live with their father, Everton Biddersingh, and his wife, Elaine Biddersingh. Dwayne had a difficult and unhappy life in Toronto, where he was abused, neglected, and isolated by his parents. He died in 1992 after allegedly falling from the balcony of the family's 22nd floor apartment. However, his death was never fully investigated nor explained. His case was overshadowed by that of his sister, Melonie Biddersingh, whose body was found in a burning suitcase in 1994. This is the story of his short, tormented life, his profoundly sad demise, and the questions that remain unanswered. If you find videos like these intriguing and want to see more, please click the like button, as that really does help the channel. A hopeful journey to Canada. Dwayne Biddersingh was born in 1979 in Kingston, Jamaica, where he lived with his mother, Opal Austin, and his sister, Melonie Biddersingh. He had a close bond with his sister, who was 4 years his senior. He also had a half-brother, Cleon Biddersingh, from a different mother but shared the same father. In 1991, Dwayne's father, Everton Biddersingh, who had left Jamaica years earlier, returned to visit his family. He offered to take Dwayne, Melonie, and Cleon to Canada with him, promising them a better life and opportunities in Toronto. Dwayne's mother agreed to let them go, hoping they would have a brighter future. However, Dwayne's new life in Canada was far from what he had hoped for. He was never enrolled in school, never allowed to leave the apartment he shared with his father, stepmother, and siblings, and never got a chance to contact his mother again. He became isolated, lonely, and depressed. On the flight to Toronto, their first, the children were practically blowing up with excitement of their new life. Theirs was the usual immigrant's dream: a better life, more opportunity, the big chance. With the Jamaican twist, where children are often sent to join relatives in the extended clan who are doing even marginally well in Canada or the United States. Because marginally well in any of those countries is still much better economically than it is for so many in Jamaica. However, it all went sour almost immediately. The Biddersinghs by now had 2 young boys of their own, and Elaine was pregnant with a 3rd child, a girl. In the cramped confines of that small 1-bedroom apartment on the 22nd floor of a closed avenue high-rise came this trio of long-limbed country kids from Jamaica, each with a single suitcase containing all they owned in the world. Within a week, Elaine was openly doubting that Dwayne was Everton's son. Dwayne had afro hair, she said, and didn't look like his father. This was Dwayne's welcome to Canada. He was young, with an open, trusting face of the boy in his passport picture. Now, his father didn't seem to want him, and his stepmother didn't appear to even like him. Soon he was having to scrub the bathroom after using it, with he and his Jamaican siblings having to use separate dishes from the precious Canadian-born children, lest their germs dirtied the other children of their father and the stepmother. Later, they were fed different, forced to eat on the floor, and eventually they were fed less and less food. Cleon's pride was deeply injured. For instance, whenever they were fed cornmeal, a food fed mostly to dogs in Jamaica. A nightmare of abuse. Dwayne's parents subjected him and his siblings to a catalogue of horrific abuse that lasted for years. They were beaten and burnt with an iron, their ear was cut, and they were locked in a closet or on a balcony for days without food or water. They were forced to sleep on the floor or in a bathtub filled with water, and they were denied all medical care. Additionally, the children were also made to do all the household chores while the couple treated their biological son like royalty. Dwayne was especially targeted by his parents because they believed he was not Everton's biological son. They made him take a DNA test, which proved Everton was his father, but still they treated him as an outsider and a burden. They also cruelly blamed him for Melonie's injuries, which they themselves inflicted on her as part of their torture. Dwayne endured the abuse silently, hoping that one day he would escape or be rescued. He wrote letters to his mother in Jamaica but never got a chance to mail them. He also kept a diary where he expressed his feelings and dreams. He wrote that he wanted to go back to Jamaica to see his mother again. None of the three ever walked through the doors of a school building, though all had gone to school in Jamaica and had big plans for their future. Cleon was a gifted runner and dreamt of competing in the Olympics. Melonie wanted to be a nurse, and Dwayne, as befits a child who could dazzle and hold a room, wanted to be a singer. Even with his father and stepmother, Dwayne managed to wangle a little freedom, certainly more than Melonie ever could. Cleon had the most, but never felt free. He said Everton got him a pager, showed him how and where to sell crack cocaine, and often watched him from the balcony as he headed out on his bicycle to deal. All the money made was turned over to Everton. Melonie had the least freedom of movement. She was never allowed out of the apartment unless Everton or Elaine was with her, and she was also the chief caregiver of the couple's baby daughter. When the only regular visitor to the apartment, a friend of Everton's, came over, Melonie was usually stuffed into a closet and hidden from sight. The few people outside of the family who ever clamped eyes on her, such as Ava Stewart, who knew Opal and her kids from Jamaica but now lived in Toronto, never saw her without the baby on her lap, and usually from a distance. Yet, Dwayne, also known as Sabo, somehow convinced Everton and Elaine to let him work as a paper boy for the Toronto Sunday Sun. Capable boy that he was, Sabo managed to track down Ava Stewart and began showing up occasionally to visit her. Then Ava, now 44, had left her grandmother's and moved out on her own, far away from the Parkdale area, in the western downtown area of the city where the Biddersinghs lived. Somehow, the ingenious Sabo found her, and one Sunday in June of 1992, he turned up. Stewart remembered the visit because her sister and a girlfriend of theirs from Jamaica were over. Her basement apartment suddenly filled with the laughter and the noise Sabo always brought. Stewart made them all dinner, and Sabo asked if he could sleep over, and she said sure, but call your father and let him know. She didn't think that he had. We were happy, Stewart said after that night. We were having fun. Sabo was playing, talkative as usual. She slept on the sofa bed in the living room, giving up her bed for her guests. The next morning, she said, she was awakened by a knock on the door. It was Everton. He wanted to know if Sabo was there. He was sleeping, so she patted him on the shoulder to wake him up and told him, "Your dad's here." He jumped out of his sleep, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "He's gonna kill me." And then the whole morning was chaos. Ava Stewart had difficulty remembering the details of what Sabo said that day. It was 20 years earlier, after all. But she and the other two women realized that something was going on, because the boy was frightened. Sabo went with Everton. Of course, Stewart could hardly stop him. But the same day, Everton was knocking at her door again, demanding to know what Sabo discussed with her. He wanted her to tell him everything that Sabo had talked about with her. Ava said Sabo never told her anything the night before, so she couldn't tell him Everton anything. Everton, she said, wasn't happy. He was angry, as he wanted her to give him information and she didn't have any information to give to him. Ava was bewildered, couldn't figure out what was going on, but sometime later she got a call from her mother in Jamaica, and she was asking, "Is it true? Is it true?" And Opal, Sabo's mother, was in the background crying and saying that Sabo was dead. So Ava called Everton and told him what she had heard. He confirmed it. Sabo was dead. Or as Stewart told the Toronto police when they interviewed her almost 2 weeks later, Everton replied, "Yes, everything's alright, but he's dead." The details of the boy's death remained murky, as always they are, given the circumstances. But what is clear is that the same day Sabo went back home to Parkdale with his father, apparently frightened out of his skin, Sabo either jumped from the balcony, slipped trying to get onto the neighboring one, or somehow went over the railing. His body was discovered on the front lawn below. Police were dispatched, obviously, with Kim Carr, now retired from the force but then a 14th Division detective in charge. The building superintendent identified the boy's apartment and they headed up to Suite 2203. Cleon answered the door. Only E, Melonie, and the baby were there. Everton and Elaine having left the apartment. Cleon told them that Sabo had been acting up. He was jealous of the attention Melonie got and that he had beaten Melonie up the day before. He said that after Everton brought Sabo home, Sabo didn't seem upset. Cleon said that his parents called him into the bedroom, and then they heard the balcony door open and he came out and saw him standing on the railing. And he jumped. Man, he just jumped, Cleon said. Sabo, meanwhile, was pronounced dead at St. Joseph's Hospital. Everton called from a phone booth, Officer Carr said, and told him he knew what had happened, but could not deal with it yet, as his wife was screaming, crying, trembling, and he had to deal with her first. In the apartment, Constables Irene Osar and Joy Zentner were interviewing Melonie. Osar noted an astonishing array of injuries on the girl's body, then just 15 years old. Welts and scratches covered her arms and legs. There were welts on her stomach, a cut to her head, a swollen nose, and swollen ankle and hand. Osar's unwritten notes of the girl's injuries entered at the preliminary hearing run to 2 full pages. From her home in a poor Kingston ghetto, Opal Austin, a roadside vendor of cigarettes and sweets, was virtually without resources. She had no phone, no money, and no power. But she had one friend who knew someone who knew someone. And when Sabo died, she begged that person for help. Ultimately, the Jamaican government wrote her a letter dated June 17, 1993, smack in the middle of the deaths of the 2 children she had sent to Canada. Signed on behalf of the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, the letter represented that the Jamaican consulate in Toronto had contacted Melonie and were satisfied that she was doing well. She was scheduled to begin school in September of that year, but was currently staying home with her younger brother and sister. In fact, Melonie had 2 younger half-brothers and a half-sister. The consulate also carried out investigations into the death of Dwayne Biddersingh through interviews with official sources and, of course, Everton Biddersingh. The father, the letter said, reported that Dwayne was very daring since he arrived in Canada, and said that after being brought home following his adventure at Ava Stewart's, he had gotten up suddenly, ran to the balcony, and jumped without warning or reason. The police and the coroner investigated. The consulate reported, but there was no indication of him being pushed. Oh, and except for Dwayne's death, the letter said that the consulate found that Melonie seems to be quite happy. Imagine that. The bottom line is that in June of 1992, 2 years and 3 months before the bits and pieces of her own ruined body were found in a torched suitcase, Melonie Biddersingh was already so badly hurt that her injuries took 2 pages to detail. Could she have been saved if police had called in a child welfare agency or taken her to a hospital that night where a nurse might have notified Children's Aid? Or if someone in authority had not found Everton Biddersingh to be such a reliable historian? Perhaps she could have been. But child welfare agencies sometimes drop the ball too, and there is no guarantee that they would have followed through. But what is certain is that the abuse that was plain even in 1992 grew much worse, and Melonie endured it for 27 more months. When in 2011, Elaine Biddersingh, in a sort of self-serving quasi-confession, told her pastor that the girl in the suitcase was her husband's daughter, and the pastor reported it, the Toronto police were finally able to identify the girl and began investigating Melonie's death. Dwayne's case was reopened as part of the investigation into Melonie's murder, but no new evidence or charges were brought forward. Everton and Elaine were both found guilty of murdering Melonie and sentenced to life in prison. However, they were never held accountable for Dwayne's demise or the abuse they inflicted on him and his siblings. There were so many inconsistencies and gaps in the investigation that raised doubts about the official verdict. For example, the police found the welts and bruises all over Melonie's body when they interviewed her about Dwayne's death. She told them that Dwayne had beaten her because he was angry that she was getting more attention than him. Everton and Elaine supported this claim and told the police that Dwayne was violent and suicidal. However, the police did not contact the Children's Aid Society nor follow up on Melonie's injuries. Another example is that the police did not interview any of the neighbors or witnesses who saw or heard anything related to Dwayne's death. Some of them reported hearing screams and the thuds from the apartment before Dwayne fell. Others reported seeing Everton carrying a large suitcase out of the apartment shortly after Dwayne fell. Nevertheless, none of these accounts were recorded or investigated by the police. A third example is that the police did not conduct an autopsy on Dwayne's body or collect any forensic evidence from the scene. They relied on a visual examination by a coroner, who concluded that Dwayne died from multiple injuries due to falling from a height. This examination did not rule out any other possible causes of death or injuries prior to falling. Dwayne Biddersingh's tragic story is a chilling reminder of the profound failures within the child protection system and law enforcement. His life was marked by unimaginable cruelty, abuse, and isolation. His untimely death remains shrouded in mystery, overshadowed by the horrific fate of his sister, Melonie. The questions that persist around Dwayne's case highlight the need for a thorough and unrelenting commitment to investigating and preventing child abuse. As we reflect on this disturbing tale, let it serve as a call to action for every one of us to be vigilant in the protection of the most vulnerable among us, ensuring that no child suffers in silence. On May 27, 2011, Shaquille Boothe was found in his home with no signs of life. His once promising life and any dreams he had for the future was tragically cut short. Another child who was taken from Jamaica and flown to Canada for a promised better life. But like others before him, it seemed these children were destined to end up facing disastrous outcomes rather than living that promised better life. Shaquille was just 10 years old when he was found lifeless in the home he shared with his father, stepmother, and 8-month-old sibling. At the time, police were not giving any specific information, other than to say that it appeared that Shaquille had been armed and that he had sustained injuries at least 2 days before he passed away. This is the true crime story about Shaquille's short life and tragic demise. If you find videos like these absorbing or informative, please support the channel by clicking the like button. A lot of these cases are not given the exposure or attention they should be given or deserve. So based on this, I decided to shed some light on a few of these cases. However, because of the nature of most of these videos, they have limited or no ads. If you are so inclined and want to chip in and help support my research, you can use the PayPal link below to donate to the channel. Your support is much appreciated. Shaquille's dream of a better life. Shaquille Boothe was born in Jamaica, where he resided with his grandmother and his mother, who was separated from his father. Shaquille harbored dreams of living with his father and stepmother in Canada, hoping for a more promising life than the one he lived in Jamaica. His excitement flowed when in 2010 his father Garfield Boothe and stepmother Nichelle Boothe came to visit him in Jamaica and informed him of their plans to take him to live with them in Canada. With much anticipation, Shaquille packed his belongings and soon bid farewell to his mother and grandmother, who embraced him and urged him to be good and happy. Regrettably, Shaquille's dreams transformed into a harrowing nightmare upon his arrival in Brampton, Ontario in 2010. Instead of love and care, he was subjected to mistreatment and neglect by the very individuals who were meant to love and protect him. For months on end, Shaquille endured being restrained to his bed, subjected to harsh treatment and deprived of sustenance by his father and stepmother. They lashed him with a belt, rained down punches and kicks into his body, and withheld food from him. He was isolated from his siblings and the outside world, and he was treated as an outsider. Confined in a dark and squalid room, Shaquille's pleas for assistance and signs of illness and injury went unanswered and unnoticed. Shaquille's body bore witness to a multitude of bruises, scars, and wounds. He suffered from severe malnutrition, his weight plummeting to a mere 60 pounds at the age of 10. He developed health issues alongside internal injuries from the brutal incidents he endured. On May 27, 2011, he succumbed to his sufferings, alone and in pain in the same bed where he had endured immense torment. His tragic situation was uncovered when his father called 911, alleging that Shaquille had stopped breathing. However, paramedics and law enforcement soon recognized that something was gravely amiss. They found Shaquille's lifeless body cold and rigid, with froth emanating from his mouth. They noticed the chain and the padlock on his bed, the belt and the signs of harm, as well as the foul odor and squalor of the room. There were no personal belongings or toys to be found. It was evident that Shaquille had been subjected to ill treatment prior to his tragic end. Subsequent investigations revealed that Shaquille's father and stepmother had a history of domestic issues and child mistreatment. They had relocated from Jamaica to Canada in 2009, leaving Shaquille with his grandmother initially. Even after taking him to Canada a year later, they failed to enroll him in school or seek medical attention for him. They concealed him from relatives and neighbors, deceitfully misrepresenting his whereabouts and well-being. They unjustly assigned him the blame for their difficulties and vented their anger and frustration upon him.
I see him out in the wintertime, in a pair of shoes too big for him, no gloves and no jacket, in a blizzard, shoveling the driveway. I should have sent something then.
The sweet, smiling face of 10-year-old Shaquille Boothe, a tidy home on a quiet cul-de-sac. The picture of what may have happened here gets grimmer with each passing day.
It is a difficult case. It's an upsetting case for probably everyone involved.
Neighbors were shocked because Garfield had been bragging to them about how he had gone to Jamaica to get his son and bring him to Canada, where he was going to get a good education and live a better life. Dan Gregg, a close neighbor, said that Shaquille was a sweet boy, and even though he was shy, he was getting better about it and had good manners, showing he had been taught well. Dan said it was very odd that he had not seen Shaquille in over a month, since he knew that someone had given him a bike in April. He was never seen outside riding his bike. A few months before that, Shaquille was seen outside in the driveway wearing shoes that were too big for him, no gloves and no coat. He was shoveling snow from off the driveway all alone. Dan said that Garfield had spoken of how Shaquille would be outside in Jamaica, playing in the jungle or in the river. Garfield said that he was having trouble getting Shaquille to go outside in Canada and talked about the video games he had bought him. Neighbors also said that while Shaquille had been to school the previous year, he had not been to class at all that year. Garfield had told school officials that Shaquille had gone back to Jamaica to live with his mother. Both Shaquille's father and stepmother were apprehended and charged with second-degree murder. They pleaded not guilty and endeavored to shift blame onto one another. They asserted that they loved Shaquille and had attempted to discipline him, but portrayed him as a challenging and disobedient child. They professed ignorance regarding the circumstances of his situation and claimed to be shocked and sorrowful at his passing. However, the jury remained unconvinced. They were presented with distressing evidence of Shaquille's mistreatment and neglect, as well as a graphic photograph of his body. They heard the accounts of Shaquille's siblings, who had been witnesses to some of the mistreatment and were too frightened to speak up. Furthermore, they were presented with the expert opinion of a forensic pathologist, who confirmed that Shaquille's situation was a result of extensive blunt impact trauma, and that he had chronic injuries, malnutrition, and infections contributing to his tragic outcome. On April 5, 2014, Garfield Boothe and Nichelle Boothe were convicted of second-degree murder. They were sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 18 years. The court deemed them to have displayed no remorse or empathy for Shaquille and to have committed a heinous and horrendous crime. Shaquille Boothe's tragic situation profoundly impacted the public, raising questions concerning the child protection system and the prevention of child mistreatment. Shaquille's short life story serves as a somber reminder of the vulnerability and innocence of children. It further highlights the duty of us adults in safeguarding children, regardless of whether they are our own or someone else's child. It also stands as a testament to the courage and resilience of children, some of whom, against the odds, managed to survive their ordeal. Shaquille Boothe deserved much better. He deserved to have lived, to grow, learn, play, love, and be loved. His story should never be forgotten.
Welcome back to Elite Jamaica. And for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Alex. Today's video is about the unfortunately short life of Melonie Biddersingh, a 17-year-old girl from Jamaica, who in 1991 was brought by her father to Canada with dreams of a brighter future. Her dreams would soon be eclipsed by a nightmarish existence, a life marred by unspeakable abuse, relentless neglect, and ultimately a shocking murder at the hands of her very own parents. Her tragic fate remained a baffling enigma for nearly 2 decades, until a shattering revelation cracked the case wide open, leading to the arrest and conviction of her tormentors. And if you find videos like these interesting or informative, please click the like button and remember to subscribe, as that really does help the channel. This is the shattering chronicle of Melonie's life, her brutal demise, and the long-awaited triumph of justice. Born in 1977 in Kingston, Jamaica, Melonie Biddersingh enjoyed an idyllic childhood, basking in the warmth of her mother's love and the companionship of her siblings. She was a brilliant, cheerful girl, celebrated for her passion for books and her love of writing. Her mother, an unwavering pillar of support, stoked the fires of her ambition, urging her to chase her educational and career dreams. In 1991, when Melonie was only 14 years old, her father, Everton Biddersingh, who had been absent for years, returned with a grand promise, a promise of a better life in Canada. For Melonie and her younger brother Dwayne, the lure of brighter prospects in Toronto was irresistible, and their mother offered her blessings. Unbeknownst to them, this hopeful venture would soon morph into a grotesque nightmare. Now, Everton had 7 children from 4 different mothers, but now that he had moved to Canada, Melonie's mother Opal believed he had settled down and his new wife seemed to be a loving parent, so she didn't have any problems sending Melonie and Dwayne to live with their father in Canada.
Why do you think it was a good idea to have Melonie and Dwayne go to Canada?
Well, people they tell we must make them go on. When I tell them that the father going to help them, people used to say it'll be better off for the children.
Just to let you know that Dwayne, Melonie's younger brother, he also suffered a horrible fate However, this video will focus on Melonie, and we will cover Dwayne's life in the next video. You don't want to miss that. So in 1991, when Everton moved the brother and sister 3,000 kilometers from Jamaica to Toronto, they were joined by another of Everton's Jamaican-born children, 17-year-old Cleon. The three children now had 3 Canadian half-siblings, and all 8 of them lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. Melonie's idyllic dreams were ruthlessly shattered, as her father and stepmother thrust her into an unending nightmare of relentless abuse. This harrowing nightmare encompassed ghastly physical, emotional, psychological, and sexual torment. She was subjected to brutal physical punishments, malicious forceful haircuts, and prolonged periods of agonizing isolation in a cramped closet or out on a balcony, deprived of food or water, forced to endure sleep on frigid floors or in bathtubs filled with icy water, and above all, she was denied access to vital medical care. In stark contrast, their other biological son, he was showered with privileges, while Melonie and her brothers bore the full force of their parents' ruthless cruelty. Melonie's brothers were hapless witnesses to these horrors, paralyzed by fear, rendered helpless, unable to intervene or to report the unspeakable abuse. They too became victims of their parents' barbarity and neglect. Everton, her father, masked his brutality behind a web of deceit, falsely proclaiming that Melonie was possessed by demonic forces, justifying her brutal punishment. To obscure the truth, he wove a tapestry of lies to friends and relatives, perpetuating the wicked fiction that Melonie had run away. Despite the relentless torment, Melonie clung tenaciously to dreams of escape, confiding her deepest feelings and aspirations in a secret diary. She yearned for a future as a nurse, a beacon of hope for the suffering, much like herself. The darkest chapter in this horrific account unfolded in December 1994. In a chilling twist of fate, Melonie's parents, Everton and Elaine Biddersingh, made the unthinkable decision to end her life. Their actions sealed her grim fate within the confines of their apartment, where she met her tragic end. Following her death, they concealed her emaciated body within a suffocating suitcase, transported it to a remote location north of Toronto, and callously discarded it. With chilling precision, they erased all traces of their unspeakable crime, perpetuating the illusion that she had run away, ensuring that their dark secret remained buried. September 4th, 1994, at 3 a.m., a police officer was patrolling an industrial area just north of Toronto when he spots what seemed to be a tire fire. When he had put out the flames with an extinguisher, he realized it was more than just a burning tire. It was a suitcase, and inside of that suitcase was a body. Post-mortem revealed a few facts. The victim was a teenage girl, 5 feet 2 inches, and horribly malnourished. She weighed just over 50 pounds, the typical weight of a 7 or 8-year-old. It was also revealed that she suffered because she had 21 broken bones. However, the extent of the damage rendered her beyond recognition. She became known simply as the girl in the suitcase in media and police reports. And for almost 18 years, her story remained a chilling mystery, concealed in the darkest of shadows. Meanwhile, back in Jamaica, a mother was desperately searching for her daughter who had left for Canada with her father and the promises of a better life.
Opal Austin lives in the South Kingston slum. In the early 90s, her house was filled with 5 kids she was raising on her own. Melonie was 13 and loved to read.
Years passed without Opal hearing any word from either Everton or Melonie. But in the late 90s, Everton and Elaine showed up in Jamaica. They had moved back home, but there was no Melonie. When she asked Everton for Melonie, he told her that Melonie had run away to America.
When me ask them what happened to Melonie, them say Melonie run away. She run away gone America.
She had no way to contact her daughter, so she tried the best thing she could. Being a coconut vendor who catered mostly to tourists, she began to show American tourists one of Melonie's pictures to see if anyone would recognize the teenager, but to no avail.
Buy drinks from here, so I would take out the picture out of my bag and show them.
So because you believe that Melonie ran off to the United States,
Yeah.
you would ask every American you could see if they knew her.
Yes, but it never worked.
Time passed, and Everton and Elaine moved back to Canada. 5 years passed, then 10 years, and 17 years later, in 2011, a pivotal moment transpired when Elaine Biddersingh, consumed by an overwhelming guilt, made a startling confession to her pastor. She revealed that she and her husband, Everton, were responsible for Melonie's murder. Tormented by the specter of Melonie's ghost, she sought redemption for her heinous sins. The pastor, fully aware of the gravity of the confession, wasted no time in contacting the authorities.
She was pretty emotional when she worshiped. She'll raise her hands and she'll yell, hallelujah, and she'll move from one back to the other bench. Her husband would just look at her and laugh. I would say probably mocking her, just laughing at her and saying that she was probably crazy. When everybody left, she said, Pastor, can I talk to you? And I said, sister, what do you want to talk about? She said, I want to talk about a girl. I said, what girl? A girl that Everton killed.
This pivotal revelation triggered the reopening of the case, ultimately leading to the identification of Melonie through DNA matching her mother back in Jamaica. In March 2012, Everton and Elaine Biddersingh were apprehended and charged with first-degree murder. Additionally, one of Melonie's brothers was arrested for his involvement in the disposal of her body. In 2016, Everton Biddersingh faced a trial and was convicted of first-degree murder by a jury. His sentence condemned him to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Elaine Biddersingh, also tried by a jury, was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 16 years. The presiding judge in both trials decried the unimaginable crimes committed against Melonie by her parents, who displayed no remorse. He extolled Melonie, however, for her unwavering courage and resilience. The heart-wrenching tale of Melonie Biddersingh serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty. Her life was unjustly cut short by her own father and stepmother, and her tragedy remained a mystery for nearly 2 decades. Yet, the long-awaited breakthrough in the case and the subsequent legal proceedings ensured that justice was served. Melonie's story stands as a testament to the enduring need to protect and seek justice for those suffering from child abuse and neglect, even when the darkness seems impenetrable. Melonie's memory lives on, a poignant reminder of the resilience and unwavering pursuit of justice for the most vulnerable among us. If you want to see a more detailed account of these events, there will be a link down below. And if you found this video informative, please leave your feedback in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching.
Jamaica. Don't forget to drop a like and a comment. Don't forget to subscribe.